Hello guys, welcome back to our Fanfic Hub channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto left Konoha and teleported to My Little Pony universe? Part 1. Huge shout out to DE2810 for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Konoha, also known as Konoha for short, was one of the major hidden villages located within the Land of Fire. In the past, the village was owned only by the Senju and the Uchiha clans. Now the village occupies various powerful clans, such as the foreseeing Hyugas, the brave Akimichis and the strategic Naras, making it the village with the most assets within the continent. As of tonight, the Konoha were experiencing a harsh rainy weather that seemed to cast the entire village into an extreme gloomy atmosphere. None of the citizens bothered to walk along streets in such an unforgiving weather, aside than a few passing shinobis on patrols and civilians armed with umbrellas as their means of protection. Zooming to the outskirts of the city, we arrived at the Konoha cemetery, where rows after rows of grey tombstones lie, with a sculpture located at the front representing the will of fire of the village. A male teen stood among the dull and grey tombstones of the cemetery. The teen has unruly sun-kissed blonde locks and a pair of cerulean blue eyes. 3 pair of whisker-like scar marks adorned both his cheeks, giving him a foxy appearance. He was clad in a black and orange zipped-up jacket over a crimson-red cloak with black flame pattern licking its trimmings, a pair of orange jumpsuit pants that has a kunai holster and bandage wrapped around its left calf, and a pair of black ninja sandals. A large scroll was strapped to his lower back by the means of a belt that was coiled around his left shoulder. Unfazed by the drizzle that soaked the teen to his bones, the blonde continued to stare at the particular tombstone in front of him with an unreadable expression. And it probably would have stayed that way had it were not for the voice inside his head. "It's time, Kit." A gruff voice mentally said within his mindscape. "If we don't leave anytime soon, they're going to find us." At first, the teen showed no sign of listening until he spoke, revealing his deep voice. "I know, Kurama." Turning around and walking away, the sun-kissed blonde casted one final glance at the tombstone for a few more seconds. A look of apprehension flashed through his visage before casting a hand seal and disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Using the body flicker jutsu, the whiskered teen arrived at a forest clearing that was a good distance away from Konoha. The field was used to be a logging area to gather materials for rebuilding Konoha, as indicated by the numerous empty tree trunks scattered all over the place, but was abandoned once the 4th Ninja War was over. "This is a good spot," he mentally thought to himself as he slung the large scroll he was carrying off his back and laid it on the ground. Unfurling the large scroll, the Jinchuriki was greeted with the sight of hundreds of ink-written kanji that either crisscross, circulates or overlapped one another, forming one huge web of kanji. "I just hope this works." "It will," the mental voice added. "We put a lot in the line for this." Naruto's facial expression remained unreadable as he stared at his handiwork. He had rechecked the seal jutsu and tinkered with it for several times, but that doesn't necessarily help determine whether if it will work or not. After all, it's not every day someone decided to create a jutsu that allows interdimensional travel in a matter of few months' time. Heck, he was surprised that he could even make one simply by referring through some old textbooks his godfather had left him with, as well as with the aid of his Bijuu partner, Kurama. If things came for the worse and the jutsu doesn't work, they might be stuck in the plane of time-space continuum. Only one way to find out, he declared as he bit his thumb and causing a trickle of blood to flow out before flipping into a blur of hand seals. If there's one crucial thing that he learned from this, it's that his teleportation jutsu absurdly took more hand seals than any other regular jutsu. It was also for this very reason on why he initiated it far away from Konoha, to ensure that no one would disturb him in the process. In the midst of his preparation, he managed to spare one last glance behind him. Though he could see nothing but foliage after foliage of leaves, he knew that's the rough direction of his hometown, Konoha. "Sorry guys," he muttered to himself. "All of you are better off without me." But that said, he slammed his palm onto the center of the scroll. Reverse summoning technique. For the first few eye-blinking seconds, nothing unusual happened. Then, just when he thought it painstakingly failed, he began to feel himself and his very life essence being tugged into the scroll. As if to reflect this happening, his body began to emit a soft yet ethereal glow. Almost in a similar manner to when he entered his tailed beast cloak mode, with the minor exception of the conjured light being white in color. The blonde himself managed to notice this change before disappearing out of thin air, along with the scroll used to conjure the jutsu. It was fortunate that he didn't stall any longer, because as soon as he was gone, a group of shinobi landed onto the clearing. "Where is he, Kiba?" one of them spoke upon landing. He had a pair of lazy yet calculative eyes, black spiky hair that were tied in a pineapple manner, and was clad in a long-sleeved dark blue shirt that had a red swirl printed on the upper part of sleeves over a forest green vest, a pair of pants that had the same shade of blue as his shirt, and a pair of black sturdy ninja sandals. The question was directed to another member who was riding a white dog that was as big as him. Contrary to the first one, the person named Kiba gave off a fur-like appearance with his slitted onyx black eyes and his brown hair spiked in all directions. To top it off, he was dressed in leather attire consisting of a zipped-up black jacket as well as pants and a pair of ninja sandals. Said person sniffed the air a few times alongside his dog before coming with a reply, "His scent ends here." "But he's not here." "I already told you his scent ends right here, didn't I?" He answered back in distaste, obviously offended by the question. "Honestly, why do we even bother looking for him? It's not like we forced him to leave or anything. If anything, he deserved it." Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say as he was immediately subjected to a punch in the left cheek courtesy of the pineapple head, knocking him off the dog. With the palm resting on his injured cheek, he glared at the culprit. "What the hell was that for, Shikamaru?" "Shut it, Kiba," he warned darkly. "You of all people know the incident wasn't his fault. You wanna bet?" At this point, the two were inches away from each other's faces, and a conflict would have been ensued had it were for the intervention of one of their party members. "That's enough, both of you," a female of the group shouted, shoving the two several feet away from each other, with strength no woman should ever have. She had short pink hair that reached her neck, a pair of emerald green eyes, and was dressed in a sleeveless red kyapo dress with a circle design on the back, a pair of black shorts and a pair of black ninja sandals. "We're here to find Naruto, not to fight against each other." "Sakura's right." Another male agreed. The voice originated from another male teen that was clad in a green spandex with orange warmers adorned his lower arm and legs. If his choice of clothing wasn't bizarre enough, he had a bowl-shaped haircut and a pair of bushy eyebrows that made him weirder. Strangely enough, this was obviously a daily occurrence for the group as none of them spared him a second glance. "He shouldn't have gotten that far from here. We should split up and start looking for him." The pink head named Sakura gave him an appreciative smile. "Good idea, Lee." The girl then turned to face the rest of the group. "Shino and Kiba will go to the west, me and Lee will go north, Shikamaru and Choji head east, Ino and Sai will go south. Everyone clear? Let's go." With silent nod of confirmations and an indignant huff from Kiba, the group split apart to their designated direction, minus the two teens named Shikamaru and Choji. "You okay, Shikamaru?" Among the group, the plump male named Choji was the only one who seemed to be equipped in a fully protective garb that consisted of a red baggy bodysuit over a set of samurai armor plating. "I'm fine," the pineapple-headed teen replied back in his usual monotone voice. "You go on ahead, I'll catch up." "Alright, but make it quick," he urged before disappearing with speed that belied his appearance. Yeah, I know," he replied back, which he doubted his team member would even listen. Once he was out of sight, silence permeated across the clearing as Shikamaru remained motionless, clearly deep thought of the current situation. Then, with a click of his tongue, he took out a cigarette pack and lighter from behind his vest. "Damn it, Naruto. Did it work?" Opening his eyes, Naruto was greeted with an ever-changing myriad of colors that does not rest well with his eyes. Glancing to his left and right, he realized that the color surrounding actually congregated into the form of one large tunnel, and he couldn't tell if he was going up or falling down. This must be the time-space continuum. It was a good thing he was trained to deal with this kind of shenanigans. Otherwise, he would have puked from all the nausea he was experiencing at the moment. And puking in the time-space fabric was the last thing he wanted to accomplish in his to-do list. It does work. Don't get your hopes up just yet, Gaki. We still have yet to arrive to another world. Kurama mentally scolded. For all we know, we'd probably be stuck here forever. Naruto smiled at his partner's remark. That sounds nice. He wasn't sure if it was due to the space traveling taking its toll on him, but at this point, the blonde didn't really care where he was going to. He was already content simply from leaving the land of fire. If what Kurama said was true and he really does have stuck here, then that's that, he suppose. It's not like anyone's gonna miss him anyway, especially not after what he did. Naruto winced the moment that was mentioned. Yup, coming here was definitely a good call. Fortunately for him, the fates of another realm had prepared a plan just for him. "Do you think they'd look for me?" he asked after an undefined duration of silence. Who knew traveling would take such a long time? Kurama grunted in consideration. "Knowing that sensei of yours, he'd probably deployed all of the country's assets to search for you across the land of fire." He elaborated before grinning maniacally. You being smart enough to make a dimensional travel jutsu would be the last thing he'd possibly thought of. I'll take that as a compliment. Another moment of comfortable silence passed by and the blonde probably would have snoozed right there when the sentient being inside him spoke. I'm feeling a strong presence of energy up ahead. I'd say we're nearing our destination. He pointed out. Looks like we're not stuck here forever, after all. A statement prompted Naruto to glance up or in whatever direction he was heading to. Physics does not exist here. Sure enough, he could see a bright dot of white ahead of him amidst all the multitude of colors that no doubt served as a ticket for him to leave this bizarre place. At least, he hoped it is. Brace for impact. That caught his immediate attention. Why? He asked a little suspiciously. Because I got this feeling that we won't be leaving this place without a scratch. Meanwhile, in another realm far far away from the Fire Country, a lone mare can be seen sitting on a chair and table and having a cup of tea on a beautifully designed white balcony, complete with perfectly polished marble-tiled floors and well-sculptured semicircled stone balustrade. The mare has a pair of sparkling pale magenta eyes, a quad-colored mane and tail consisting of light cerulean, turquoise, cobalt blue and heliotrope that seemed to wave and defies gravity and was coated in a rich light fuchsia gray fur that no doubt took plenty of effort to take care of. To further elaborate her grace, the pony had a golden tiara emblazoned with a purple diamond gemstone located just behind her alicorn horn, a golden bejeweled necklace with a similar shaped purple diamond gemstone in the center, wrapped around the base of her neck, and golden ornamented slippers adorned each of her hooves. It didn't take a scientist to tell that she was of royalty descendants. Ah, peace and quiet. She rejoiced. The white pony's lips curved into a smile as she gently took a sip of her tea. Nothing beats a morning than having a cup of tea accompanied by a few of her favorite crumpets early in the morning. It was this kind of small pleasures that made her look forward to living every day. Truth to be told, her schedule was actually packed for the next few hours, but no matter, that doesn't stop her from enjoying her already scarce break. After all, such was the fate of being a leader of a country. Sadly, as scarce her breaks were, her beloved bubble of tranquility was shattered when the ground underneath her suddenly shook, prompting her to nearly drop and shatter her favorite tea set. Alarmed, the mare quickly got of her seat and looked around in shock. What was that? Princess Celestia. Upon hearing her name being called out, Celestia spun around and saw two ponies galloping towards her. One of them was a mare while the latter was a stallion. Cadence, shining. The first one was her beloved niece named Princess Mia Morcadenza, or Cadence for short. She had a pair of light purple eyes, and her feminine pony figure was enveloped in pale, light gray Cher's fur. Unlike her beloved aunt's four-colored, waving mane, Cadence's curly mane and tail only consisted of mostly moderate violet, with a few strands being moderate rose and pale gold, and was tied in a ponytail-like manner by a piece of sky blue ribbon. The stallion was her recently appointed lieutenant called Shining Armor. At first glance, the stallion's muscular body structure gave him an earth pony-like appearance, though the unicorn horn on his head meant otherwise. He had a pair of moderate cerulean blue eyes, a wild mane and tail that were a mixed color of moderate sapphire, cerulean and dark phthalo blue, and was covered in light gray fur. Rather than clad in jewelries like the first two ponies, the gray stallion was clad in a silver Greek-themed armor, consisting of a Trojan helmet with red plumes on his head, a chest plate, a saddle armor, and a set of gauntlets armed on all his four legs. We felt the ground shook just now. Shining exclaimed. Are you alright, Princess Celestia? I'm fine. The two sighed in relief, glad to know that their ruler was fine. What was that anyway? Is it an earthquake? Cadence asked worriedly. Celestia furrowed her eyebrows at that. While natural calamities still occur every now and then, an earthquake was the last thing her beloved Equestria would ever encounter due to its geographical location on the planet. I don't know, Cadence, but I doubt it's an earthquake, Lieutenant Shining replied on her behalf. But whatever caused the tremor, it's obviously coming from that direction. Pointing a hoof, the stallion prompted the two mares to avert their gaze to a faint trail of black smoke that was emerging from behind the mountain lines. Hayden squinted her eyes as she stared at the direction. Celestia could already imagine the gears churning inside her mind. Isn't that where Ponyville is? Now that you mentioned it, you're right, that is Ponyville. Shining agreed after mentally assessing it himself. What should we do, Princess Celestia? Celestia pondered deeply about this before she spoke. Lieutenant Shining, do you have anything today? The question caught said stallion by surprise, prompting him to briefly share an eye contact with Cadence. Oh no, why do you ask, Princess Celestia? We'll be paying Ponyville a quick visit. Pain. That was the only thing Naruto felt as soon as he arrived at this so-called new dimension. Kurama wasn't kidding when he said he won't be arriving here without a scratch. While the jutsu had been relatively successful, it wasn't perfect enough to provide him with a smooth painless landing. This was proven by how the blonde appeared several hundred feet above altitude level before roughly landing on the ground and inadvertently forming a huge crater like a burning meteor. Note to self. Apply less chakra into the jutsu and try to make it as less painful as possible, he feebly whispered to himself as he remained splayed in the crater he created. Fortunately, he was saved from any more physical torture when Kurama's healing factor kicked in, snapping any missile and bones back into place and patching up any open wounds. In a few minutes' time, he was completely healed. Upon getting off his crater and glancing at his newly profound surroundings, Naruto thought he landed at the Forest of Death but quickly dismissed such thought. While the place certainly carried the same dark and gloomy vibe as his home place, the trees weren't as tall or thick, not to mention the place also have flora and fauna, he wasn't entirely familiar to his realm. Still having a slight headache from the dimensional travel, Naruto pressed a palm on his forehead to soothe the pain. He winced in pain however when instead of flesh, he felt something rock solid against his head. Puzzled, the blonde brought his hand into his line of view. He froze. Instead of seeing his palm like always, Naruto was greeted with the sight of an animal hoof. Not a hand, just a hoof. And it definitely belonged to him seeing that it was twitching and moving in accordance to his command. He then proceeded on looking at his other limb and was met with the sight of another hoof. Panic began welling up within himself, the knucklehead ninja frantically looked around him for something. Anything. His eyesight then rested on a stream of water flowing nearby, in which he wasted no time limping to like a crippled old man to examine his reflection. As soon as he did, he finally realized that it wasn't just his hand that underwent a change. Instead of his human form, he was in the form of a horse layered in orange fur. His spiky blonde hair was now turned into his mane that went along the backside of his neck. His cerulean blue eyes remained the same, but he could have sworn it glowed much more than usual. Just like any other horses, he too had a tail that comes in the same color as his golden locks. Naruto blinked. A moment of awkward silence permeated by before all hell broke loose. Then, he did what any sane man would do in his situation. What the hell? What the hell? He yelled incredulously, taking a step back from the stream and looking down at his newly profound body in pure shock. Why am I a horse? Ignoring his tenant's shock, Kurama burst into a fit of echoing laughter that resonated within his mindscape, obviously enjoying his partner's newly profound predicament. If he knew any better, this was the first time he ever actually laughed genuinely over something so ridiculous. Naruto scowled. Not funny, Kurama. He said bitterly. Not funny at all. I already warned you, didn't I? He finally spoke after his laugh died down. It's impossible for you to enter an entirely different dimension without encountering any problems. I'm surprised we're even alive here of all things. How am I supposed to know that I'd turned into a horse? He retorted in defense, still unable to grasp what he was facing at the moment. I did say the consequences can be anything, didn't I? He spoke. As much as I wanted to continue this stupid argument with you, you better get out of this forest first. Naruto sighed. He supposed he can't disagree to that. Fine, this place gives me the creeps anyway. After spending a few minutes fumbling with his equipment, he managed to strap his kunai holster and bandages wrapped around his left foreleg and his large scroll resting on his back. He finally began his journey. At least, that's what he intended on doing before majestically face planting himself onto ground below. As it turned out, moving with his new sets of limbs was proven to be a tough problem for the blonde. Although the concept of moving was identical to him moving while crouching, his newly profound body structure, particularly of his horse hind legs, had more or less messed up his brain's command. Furthermore, he was still winded up from the dimensional travel, another thing he needed to tinker with in the near future. With shaky hooves, the blonde tried to step forward or anywhere for that particular matter, but immediately collapsed once more whenever he took a misstep or when his stance went wrong. You look stupid. Even a newly born offspring can move better than you do. Thanks for the vote of confidence. He replied sarcastically. Aki, don't move. Why? Because I look stupid. No, because we're not alone here. As if on cue, the blonde heard several menacing growls that echoed around him. It was only when he glanced around did he realize that there were several menacing green eyes materialize from within the darkness of the forest around them. For how long they had been there, he had no clue. Naruto instinctively entered a defensive stance which in his new body mainly involved him having to bend his knees to lower his body, but whatever preparations he had disappeared when one of the glowing green eyes finally emerged out of their cover, followed by three more. Kurama, what is that? The blonde whispered, taking a step back. At first sight, they looked like wolves, but instead of flesh and fur, they were made from branches and leaves from head to tail. Not only that, but they were also emitting green chakra-like light from between the crevices of their body. I don't know, but they're definitely not friendly, that's for sure. As if to prove his statement, one of the wolves snarled and lunged at him with his salivating fangs wide open, intent on having the blonde pony as his next meal. Overcome by his battle instinct, Naruto jumped and did an airborne roundhouse kick on the side of its head, causing it to shatter into a pile of leaves and twigs. The second one tried to pounce on him while he was still midair, but by the time it did, Naruto had returned back to solid ground and ducked under the wolf before roughly tackling it on its side, letting it receive the same fate like the first one before it had any chance to counterattack. The third and fourth were proven to be smarter than the first two as they tried to corner him from both sides, obviously trying to attack the blonde from his blind spot. Under a silent cue, they both charged at him at the same time. But the speed that belied his body, Naruto swiftly grabbed one of them by its muzzle before using the wolf as an oversized club and swung it on the other wolf that were inches away from him, simultaneously shattering the both of them into nothing but a pile of leaves and branches. "Huh, that was easier than I thought," he commented after making sure there wasn't any more around. "I was expecting more resistance." "Don't let your guard down. It's not over yet." "What do you mean?" was what he wanted to ask until he saw the tree parts remains of the wolves amid a greenish chakra-like glow. Oh. Ever so slowly, the green chakra-imbued leaves and branches levitated off the ground before congregating themselves into 4 separate clusters where they began further shaping themselves. Before he knew what was going on, the 4 wolves came back, prepared for a second round. Naruto groaned. "Oh Kami, don't tell me they're immortal." "They're not immortal, but they're close to being one." "That's reassuring to hear," he replied sarcastically. "Let's see whether if they can regenerate back or not once I shove them up with a Rasengan." Standing on his hind legs, the grinning blonde stallion began doing his signature move of creating his favorite Futon Jutsu with his 4 hooves. The wolves stopped their advancement at that, obviously wary after discovering that their next meal can fight back. But nothing happened. Puzzled, he tried forming a Rasengan once more, but still nothing happened. He couldn't even feel any chakra flowing. No chakra flowing. No chakra. "Hashirama, remember the time when you said about this realm's term and condition?" "Yeah, what about it?" Hashirama inquired. "Does it also include me not being able to use chakra?" Silence. "The idea is plausible." More silence. "Well, this isn't good. Princess Celestia, thank goodness you're here." Such was the first thing the Alicorn of Sun heard as soon as she stepped down her carriage and onto the soil of Ponyville. Looking front, Celestia was greeted with the sight of Mayor Mare, the current appointed mayor of Ponyville, accompanied by a few of the citizens behind them. None of them looked happy. "Miss Mayor, what's wrong?" she inquired. Said Mayor took a few deep breaths to calm herself down before she spoke. "A few minutes ago, there was a powerful explosion coming from the Everfree Forest," she reported. "It was disastrous, I tell you. The entire town was in complete pandemonium." Celestia and Shining eyed each other. They were going in the right direction, after all. "Are there any casualties?" The mayor shook her head. "Thankfully, nopony was injured." "That's good to know. Rest assured Miss Mayor, we'll get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, I shall leave my guards with you." Said 4 Pegasus guards who were accompanying her and Shining were surprised to hear that, but said nothing otherwise. "Feel free to ask for their help if you need anything." "Understood Princess Celestia. Oh, and please be careful when you're in the Everfree Forest, since this is the season when the Timberwolves appears." "Don't worry, we'll be fine. Let us go, Lieutenant Shining." She replied back as she turned around and head off in the direction of the Everfree Forest with a hesitant Shining armor in tow. Princess Celestia, are you sure it's a good idea to leave those guards behind?" Shining questioned once they were out of hearing range. "They're here for your protection, after all." "It's for the best," she replied back. "Whatever caused that explosion had put the entire town on edge. And if you hadn't noticed, our unannounced presence here to investigate such unforeseen event alone has made things much worse. If we were to bring any more guards along into the forest, it'll rouse the citizens' suspicion into thinking that something bad has happened, putting them in more distress, and we don't want that." Shining was speechless as he listened to her reasoning. He never actually thought of that. While he was aware that their uncalled arrival would make the citizens of Ponyville slightly panic, he never thought of it to that very extent. "But what about the Timberwolves then?" he continued on. "What if they decided to attack us when we're inside the forest?" Celestia glanced at him with a knowing smile. "Why do you think you're here? Do those things ever give up?" After killing them for the umpteenth time and coming up with the same result, he came with the conclusion that these recyclable sentient beings can't be easily killed. So the blonde changed tactic and fled the scene. Unfortunately, the wolves didn't look like they'll be giving up on him anytime soon, especially not after being killed over and over again. As troublesome as his predicament was, Naruto couldn't help but chuckle to himself. A few minutes ago, he can barely move an inch forward without tripping like an idiot. And yet, here he found himself skillfully galloping across the dark and murky forest and avoiding unwanted obstacles as if he was a horse ever since he was born. It's no wonder Kakashi-sensei called him a fast learner. On the other hand, the wolves were slowly gaining ground on him, prompting Naruto to think of an alternative plan unless he wished to become wolf meal. Luckily for him, Kurama was already on it. "Kit, look on your left. There's a bridge over there." That prompted the blonde to jerk his head at said direction. Sure enough, there was a rope bridge that stretched long above a cloudy chasm. Understanding what his partner was hinting at, the blonde changed direction and sprinted straight for the bridge. As he got closer, a look of apprehension crossed his visage and he briefly screeched into a halt when he realized just how worn out the bridge truly was. If he'd know any better, the bridge probably hasn't been used for a very long time due to its wear and tear condition. He didn't have the convenience of checking the bridge's integrity however, when he heard the wolves howling at distance behind him, signaling his impending doom. Stealing his nerve, Naruto picked up his pace and raced across the bridge, all the while silently praying to whatever deities existing in this realm for the bridge to not collapse. The bridge creaked and groaned but remained intact otherwise. As soon as he got on the other side, the blonde-maned pony wasted no time on reaching for the kunai holster he had conveniently strapped to his left foreleg earlier hand. Only to curse loudly later on when he remembered that he have hooves instead of hands. His panic escalated further when the wolves burst out of the forest on the other side, finally catching up to him. "Kurama, how am I supposed to hold a kunai with this?" he demanded. Amidst the deep of his mindscape, the blonde can actually hear his partner fassip him. "Oh, for the love of use your muzzle, not your hoof, you baka," he raged. Gripping the weapon in between his teeth, he wasted no time in cutting the rope wrapped around one of the wooden stakes that keeps the bridge together. The rope broke with an audible snap. Meanwhile, the wolves have caught sight of him and were now heading for the bridge, oblivious to what he was planning on doing. The other rope was evident to be harder to be cut, and the blonde found himself struggling due to its tighter knot, and his poor oral grip on the kunai wasn't making it any better either. Just when the wolves were midway on the bridge, he drove the kunai straight into the knot in mix of desperate and anger, effectively snapping the rope in one swift motion. The result of his action came soon after when the bridge wobbled wildly, prompting the wolves on it to halt in their approach, before falling down into the clouded chasm down below and bringing the wolves along with it. In the last attempt of struggle, one of the timberwolves tried to grab one of the wooden planks of the bridge, only to fell into abyss along with his brethren when it broke under its sudden strain. Naruto silently watched as the unfortunate wolves fell deep into the chasm, with one final echoing howl. He wasn't sure how deep the rift was and whether if such long fall would actually kill them, but at least he knew they won't be chasing him anytime soon. Spitting the kunai out of his muzzle, the orange stallion let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding and plopped on his back when the adrenaline finally abandoned his body with an audible thud. "Dear Kami, that was close," he declared. "Way too close for comfort," Kurama added offhandedly. "What the hell was that anyway, Kurama? Why can't I use chakra just now?" It seemed I have overlooked some aspects of your body." "What do you mean?" he questioned, not liking where this was going. "After conducting a quick scan of your body, I found out that your physical body isn't the only thing that had undergone a change, but your chakra coils as well." There was a brief silence before Naruto full registered what he just said. "Wait, are you saying that I can't use chakra anymore? For a full-pledged shinobi, there was nothing scarier than permanently not being able to use chakra. And Naruto wasn't an exception for this." "Calm down, Gaki. I didn't say that you permanently won't be able to use chakra. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you now, do I?" Naruto pondered about this. He had made a point. Kurama was a sentient being made entirely out of chakra. If he can't use chakra, the nine-tailed fox wouldn't still be here talking to him. "So what's gonna happen to me then?" he questioned once more. "As much as I loathe admitting it, I don't know. I've never actually encountered this kind of situation before, so I'll need some time to check it out. In the meantime, I suggest you get out of this forest fast before we encounter any more of those wolves or any other monsters that resides within this forest for that matter." Easier said than done. How am I supposed to get out of here when I don't even know where I am? Maybe investigating that building behind you would be a good start. Naruto raised a quizzical eyebrow. "Building? What building?" he inquired before turning around. "Oh, that building." The huge medieval castle loomed behind him. If the forest was scary, the castle was scarier with its ruined state, consisting of stone walls that have worn out from continuous weather influence, overgrown mosses that have decided to take hold on various parts of the castle remains, and the overall intimidating atmosphere of the entire place. Naruto stared at the huge structure with a completely blank look. How did I not see that? Your obliviousness knows no boundaries, kid. Equestria, what happened here? Parting away a few strands of her quad-colored mane from her eyes, Celestia gazed at the devastation before her that came in the form of a still sizzling crater in the middle of the ever-free forest where Naruto previously was. Apparently, she had underestimated the situation than she thought it would have been. While the deforestation was a matter she should take concern of, she was profoundly more worried of the culprit who created this crater. Not even the strongest unicorn she was familiar of was capable doing magical destruction to this extent. Trotting onward to the edge, Celestia glanced at Shining who were down in the crater who currently investigating it. "Found anything, Lieutenant Shining?" said Stallion shook his head. "None. Aside than a few odd traces of lingering magic, I found nothing." "Odd? Odd in what way?" "When I first examined the crater, all I sensed was just small traces of magic, but after doing a thorough scan, I realized that there are also traces of something else, an entirely different energy signature that I'm not familiar with. It behaves similar to magic, but at the same, it's not. Could it be black magic perhaps?" Shining shook his head once more. "Black magic usually emits a dark and malevolent aura, and this one doesn't have any of those characteristics." "Well, this is disconcerting. What should we do?" "We're going to continue the search. Whoever did this, he or she probably hasn't got that far from here." "But how are we going to do that? The Everfree Forest isn't exactly small, and if we were to call for reinforcements from Canterlot, the culprit would probably have been long gone by the time they arrived," he pointed out. "More importantly, why would any pony be doing in the forest anyway?" The alicorn of the sun fell silent as she pondered about this, and she snapped her head upwards when a light bulb flickered to life above her head. "I may have a clue on where this pony had gone to." Shining evidently perked up at that. "Really?" Celestia nodded. "I just hope I'm wrong." Meanwhile, in another part of the Everfree Forest, the blonde found himself occupied with another mind-boggling issue. And that issue involves him trying to get the front entrance of the castle ruins opened. Naruto gritted his teeth when the large double wooden door in front of him wouldn't budge, despite pulling his strongest punches. In normal occasion, he would have been able to easily pry it open with a single Rasengan or any other ninjutsu he had kept in his reserve, but seeing that he was temporarily unable to use chakra, he'll have to do it the old style. And that style of his wasn't working in the slightest at the moment. The blonde bashed it several times with his front hooves, but the door remained unperturbed, as if to mock his inability to use chakra. Poor Naruto was not amused, not one bit. "On, just stop it already," he growled agitatedly. His rage finally reached its boiling point, Naruto stopped. Naruto wasn't sure what happened at the moment in the midst of his rage, but he had a rough grasp of spinning around his heels and kicking the door with his hind legs in the classic donkey kick manner, a habit he does when dealing with stubborn vending machines. Strangely enough, the door opened. Okay, saying that he opened the door was an understatement. He literally blew the barred door off its hinges, creating a huge empty hole where the main entrance used to be located. "Whoops," he finally said after a moment of awkward silence. "I hope this place is really abandoned. I'd hate to be sent to jail for vandalism. Knowing your luck, we'd probably will." Ignoring his partner's remark, Naruto sneaked a peek inside. At first glance, he couldn't see anything except for pure darkness, but he managed to get over it in a short manner of time. If he thought the place was ruined from the outside, it was 10 times worse in the inside. There were shattered pieces of pillars and ceilings scattered all over the place, making it practically impossible for anyone to walk straightly along the corridors. The walls had deteriorated from years of weather effect, revealing the layer of dull-colored bricks that lie behind it, and there were wild plants and vines protruding from numerous crevices and cracks located within the interior. "This place is huge, I wonder who lived here," he commented as he sauntered inside, all the while looking around for any hostiles. "We can worry about that later. Right now, focus on finding clues that can help us get out of this forest." The blonde nodded. If his younger self had heard such thing, he would have whined from having to do such a boring task, but after partaking through the Fourth Ninja War, the blonde had finally understood the true essence of gathering intel and everything he had learnt in the past. He just wished he'd known of it earlier hand. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here in the first place. Venturing through one of the dark corridors of the castle, the orange stallion arrived at what seemed to be a library section of the castle that was abundantly filled with dusty old books. Taking his opportunity, he tried to read a few of the books in order to get a rough grasp of the world he was in, but instantaneously reached a dead end when he realized that none of these books were written in Japanese language, though he did found something else. Among some of the books that provided him with picture references, bless Kami they did, he noticed that they have pictures of horses and any other animals but no humans. "So I was right." Kurama spoke, breaking the silence. Naruto stopped reading the book he was holding to glance at the empty space in front of him. What's right?" he questioned, as if the QB no Yoko was snoozing right there and not inside his mindscape. "I've had my suspicions, but it seems we've arrived at a realm occupied by animals." "You mean like the summoning animals realm?" "Close, except for the fact that the occupants of this realm do not utilize chakra like us. If those wolves we encountered a while ago were of any indication, I'd say they use a different form of energy." Naruto pondered about this before closing the book he was holding with an audible thud. As unsettling as the thought of being in a world with no humans existing, he can vouch for that, seeing that he used to be temporarily trained in one. At least he knows he wasn't the only one being a horse. Seeing that the library no longer served any more purpose, Naruto ventured to the other parts of the castle. He was just about to investigate the next room when his sensitive ears caught something. "Help us." Naruto halted within his tracks. "Did you hear that, Kurama?" "Hear what?" "I heard nothing. Please help us." There it is again. Following his instincts, he arrived at another huge pair of doors, with the minor difference was that this one was being more ornamental and well designed, with a faint outline of one horse on each doors, with their respective front hooves raised high to one another. It sounds like it came from the other side of these doors. Are you sure you're not imagining things? It could probably be just the wind playing tricks on you. That's what I thought when you first talked to me. After discovering the presence of an almighty being hidden inside him and other extraterrestrial factors when he was still a naive kid, the blonde had learned to never neglect any minute details around him. Especially if said minute details involved voices that only he could hear. Using his hind legs once more, the human-turned pony Naruto quickly obliterated the worn-out doors into nothing but a pile of splinters with a boom that can probably heard across the entire forest. Just like what he did to the front entrance. Doing so had actually given him a thought to think about. Now that I'm a horse, I wonder if I could do the things Gobi did. He thought out loud before grinning. That'd be awesome. Kurama snorted. Oh please, with the current condition you're in, you'd probably end up with severely broken bones and a serious case of concussion. Gee, thanks for the boost of confidence there, Kurama. Better now than before you do anything stupid. Stepping into the room, he arrived at a huge hall that was several story high and had a worn-out red carpet that extended from the door entrance to the elevated platform at the end. This must be the throne room. Well, the battered state of the place was concerning. The blonde was curious about the contraption in the middle of the room. The orange stallion stared hard at the odd device that was made up of a large brass stand whose poles were used to hold 6 spherical stones. What is that thing? How am I supposed to know? Curiosity got the better of him. He gently reached for one of the nearest stone. "Kid, what are you doing?" Naruto halted. "I'm just checking out whatever this thing is," he answered. "You said it yourself that I should find clues that'll help us get out of here." "Yes, I did. But that doesn't mean you can just touch everything you came across," he reprimanded. "Need I remind you what happened the last time you touched something that obviously shouldn't be touched?" Pausing for a little bit, Naruto recapped back all the times when he did something as bashful as this and how he nearly got himself killed. He shrugged. "It's fine. I mean, they're just a bunch of stones, right? What could possibly go wrong?" Kurama groaned. "Dear Kami, you ninjas are a bunch of idiots. It's no wonder your kind has a shorter lifespan." Ignoring his partner's remark on mankind, Naruto resumed what he was doing and stroked the stone. Surprisingly enough, the stone actually felt smooth under his touch, almost as if he was touching silk fabric. Whoever sculpted these stones was definitely a professional, that's for sure. With his God-gifted luck, as his beloved Tsunade Bachan always proclaimed, he had expected the contraption to blow up on his face or floors below him, to collapse and lead him to his death, or stone guardians to emerge and murder him for his idiocy. But oddly enough, there was no reaction. "Huh," he uttered after a brief of silence. "See, Kurama, I told you it's going to be fine." The blonde was cut mid-sentence when all of the 7 stones suddenly emitted an ethereal glow, prompting Naruto to take a step back. "What's going on?" he demanded as the stones began to glow brighter and brighter, almost like it was about to explode. "What's happening?" "We're going to die, that's what's going to happen." The Kyuubi no Yoko barked. "Get out of there already." Naruto would have gladly obliged, but before he can even do anything, the stones engulfed the entire throne room in a brilliant flash of light, forcing Naruto to shield his eyes lest he wanted to be blinded. "Princess Celestia, why are we heading to the castle of the 2 sisters?" Shining asked worriedly as he trotted beside the white alicorn. Although he wasn't a citizen of Ponyville, he had heard enough stories from his colleagues and friends that revolved around said place. One thing for sure, none of those stories were comfortable to hear. "I need to check up on something real quick," Celestia simply replied. She must have detected the uncertainty in the lieutenant's voice because she continued. "You don't have to follow me if you want. I can manage myself there." Shining inhaled a shaky breath. As tempting as the offer was, he couldn't just abandon the ruler of Equestria because of some rumors. Particularly not in that castle of all places. "No, I'm good." In the midst of their conversation, the alicorn and unicorn arrived at the broken bridge. The very same rope Naruto had cut loose a while ago. The bridge collapsed, he commented as he glanced down at the chasm and the remains of the bridge that was loosely dangling by their side of their cliff. "Stand back, Princess Celestia, I got this." Using his unicorn capability, Shining imbued the collapsed bridge in his signature light rose-colored magic power, prompting the bridge to slowly float upwards before connecting itself to the wooden stakes on the other side and fix itself. Truth to be told, they can actually magically teleport over there, but he didn't want to trouble Princess Celestia. Pressing a hoof on the bridge, the lieutenant tested the bridge a few times to make sure its integrity is ensured. He whistled. Twilly was right, that repair spell was useful after all. He complimented before turning around to face Celestia. We're free to continue. Celestia nodded. Good work, Lieutenant Shining. As the two slowly walked across the newly repaired bridge, the fog that previously obscured their visions parted away and the castle of the two sisters came into view in its ruined glory. Cold shiver ran down Shining's spine when he saw the castle, but he tried his best to ignore it for the sake of Celestia. Not too long after that, the two arrived at the huge gaping hole where the castle's front entrance previously was several minutes ago. Although Shining paid it no attention as he walked in, Celestia had briefly stopped her movement and casted the broken door with a suspicious look. Is something wrong, Princess Celestia? He inquired when he realized she wasn't following. It's nothing. She answered back as she resumed walking. Let's move on. Princess Celestia is not acting like herself. Shining thought as he glanced at his leader with a somewhat pitiful look. I guess even after all these years she's still haunted by that incident. Not wanting to trouble the Alicorn, the lieutenant decided to keep his muzzle shut and let Princess Celestia do her thing whatever it was. The journey throughout the castle was rather uneventful, but Shining had kept his guard up in case there were any hostiles nearby. Fortunately, aside than a few spiders and other creepy crawlies that had put Cadence into complete distress, he found none. Their trip came to an end when Celestia and Shining arrived at an open pair of large doors that were obviously led to the throne room. Just like the front entrance a while ago, the doors were widely opened, another thing that made her uncomfortable. As soon as she stepped in, the Alicorn of the sun throbbed with pain and longing as she was swarmed by various nostalgic memories. Excluding its wrecked state, the throne room appeared exactly just like how she had last seen long time ago. Unfortunately, her memory reminiscing moment was cut short when Shining suddenly cried out. Princess Celestia, look, there's some pony over there. That broke Celestia out of her deep thoughts and prompted her to look away. Sure enough, there was indeed a pony lying in the middle of the throne room. How she didn't notice him a while ago, she had no clue. Meanwhile, Shining was a step ahead of her and had flash teleported to his side. Hey, are you okay? He called out, shaking the unconscious pony. The colt groaned a few incoherent words. Is he alright? She inquired once she arrived there. There was a brief silence before Shining spoke. He's fine, he's just unconscious, that's all. He reported. What is this guy doing here anyway? Celestia took the opportunity to examine him. Judging from his size, the blonde-maned, orange-furred stallion appeared almost the same age as Shining and was obviously an earth pony due to the absence of a horn or wings. Just like most ponies, he doesn't wear any piece of clothing minus the pouch strapped to his left foreleg and the fancy-looking scroll slung over his back. What should we do? He inquired. Celestia bit her lower lip, obviously thinking deeply about this. Aside than the blonde colt she was looking at, they didn't found any pony else in the Everfree forest. Thus, it made him the most susceptible suspect so far. So Celestia came up with the only conclusion she can do at that very instant. Prepare the carriage. We're bringing him back to Canterlot. Oh Kami, where am I now? As the sudden flash of light's intensity ceased, the blonde opened his cerulean blue eyes and expected to see the castle ruined grounds once more. Instead, he was standing in a blank white void which he assumed was another part of his mindscape that he never treaded through. How he came up to such conclusion he had no clue. Probably due to the fact that this wasn't the first time he ventured through such places. Hashirama. He called out as he looked around. Anyone? Silence. Frowning slightly, Naruto pondered hard on how he got here when something clicked inside his mind. Am I idiot? Had he done it? Had his stupidity really became his downfall? Or was it because Kami hated him so much that he decided to conclude his life in the most stupid way possible? Fortunately, his negative thoughts ended when he felt something shone above him. Glancing up, he was greeted with the sight of 6 floating hexagonal gemstones, each having their respective colors of red, purple, violet, green, yellow and blue. Bathed in pillar of white light, the well-sculptured gemstones were easily the most beautiful thing he ever saw in the blonde's life. Whoever made these stones was obviously an expert, though he had this odd feeling that they weren't man-made regularly. However, as beautiful as they were, these stones also seemed to emit some sort of an aura that he couldn't help but felt ease with. Almost like him when he entered his tailed beast cloak. Hi. Naturally, the stones gave no verbal reply. Instead, they proceeded on floating closer towards and formed a ring around him. Once they were in place, the stones then began twirling around him at a constantly increasing speed until they were nothing but a glowing ring of white with him still at the center. The stones were spinning so fast that it triggered a whirlwind that caused his blonde mane and tail to whip wildly and his orange fur to stand on their ends. Finally. A single word alone served to break him out of his stupor. That voice. It's the same one he heard when he was in the castle ruins. Did the stones just talk to him? Whereas talking gemstones weren't the weirdest thing he had encountered in his life, there were already plenty of things that took such spot that didn't make it any less disturbing. If he knew better, fate had a way of frequently involving him with inanimate objects that may or may not try to kill him on sight. For several millennia, we have stayed dormant, simply doing nothing but waiting for the arrival of the chosen one. Yup, the stones were definitely talking to him. Either that or he was having a serious case of concussion from the impact of the fall. And now you're finally here. As if on cue, glittering particles was scattered from the rings and spread away from him in an outward manner. Said particles then congregate into one spot before taking shape into something, or some pony to be exact. The pony was big, almost the same as him except more feminine looking with a long and narrow horn protruding out of the head, a pair of bird-like wings that were as big as the rest of the body, and was clad in armor plating at some parts of her body. However, what caught the blonde's attention was the pony's mane and tail that looked like they were composed of a piece of the starry night sky instead of actual hair. He was taken aback when the pony suddenly stood on its hind legs and let out a high-pitched hoarse whine. Before he could even ask what was going on, tendrils of darkness began reaching out from where she stood and spread out. Naruto himself found it to be slightly unnerving when said darkness broadened across whatever plane of existence he was on, anointing its previously blank state into a contrasting black environment. As soon as it happened, the silhouette of the pony disappeared and was replaced with another presence. A presence he couldn't make too properly aside than it being a snake-like in shape, with non-symmetrical body parts consisting of paw-like left arm, a clawed right arm, a talon-tipped left foot and a hoofed right leg. Naruto didn't have time to identify any more of its features when the dragon-like being suddenly zipped away from its spot and flew around him in an uncoordinated manner. As he flew on, the surroundings around it would contort into an array of random colors and things that his unfortunate eyes appreciate. It was as if he was looking through a broken kaleidoscope and he never liked those things in the first place. Once again, the particles exploded in a muffled explosion before taking another form. This time, the glittering particles took the shape of another pony that looked slightly taller in comparison to the first one. With a jagged horn protruding out of the forehead, wings that resembled of an insect and absent of any distinguishable tail. Ever so often, the figure would frazzle and was momentarily replaced by another pony with different features before resuming back its original form. Alongside that, a fraction of the glittering dusts was used to form a smaller pony, a filly to be exact, in front of it. While it didn't look like the taller one was about to do any harm, Naruto's eyes squinted in suspicion when he noticed faint trails of the same glittering particles float out of the filly and was seemingly absorbed by the other. The filly didn't even seem to notice what was happening, and by the time it did, it was already slumped to the ground, either unconscious or dead. Not giving him any time to ponder what he just saw, the stones willed the particles into another pony. This pony was slightly shorter than the ones before this with a curved horn and a much more bulky appearance. Was it clad in an armor perhaps? Further examinations indicated that it was clad in some sort of a cloak that flapped under imaginary breeze. Stomping a hoof on the ground, the silhouetted pony unleashed what appeared to be a Mokuton Jutsu when rock spikes rose out of the ground around it and reached for the sky. Despite everything that was shown to him, the ever so oblivious Naruto still don't understand the situation. Why were the stones showing him all of this? Were they trying to brief him on a mission or something? If they were, then they're certainly doing a bad job at it. Kami, even a drunken Tsunade Bachin can do better than them, though they had to wake her up whenever she snoozed. He snapped out of his thoughts when he heard another dull explosion. Apparently, the gemstone weren't done just yet and was showing him one last thing. Unlike the first four, the particles this time resembled no distinctive shape and was scattered all over the place like stars in a nightly dimmed sky, no head, no arms, no legs or anything for that matter. And its lack of visual appearance however was a guttural bellow that sounded like nails scrapping on chalkboard that seemed to vertebrate across his mindscape, the first actual sound he ever heard of aside than the talking gemstones. The blonde himself flinched upon hearing it as it served to remind him of a very unpleasant memory. A memory he wished he no longer be part of. Equestria is in great need of help, chosen one, and only you are capable of doing such feat. Me? What do you mean me? I just got here. He demanded incredulously. Kami, I don't even know of this Equestria you're talking about. Silence. Rather than giving him a straight answer, the still spinning stones glowed insignificantly brighter. Sensing something was about to happen to him, he cried out once more, "Hey, you didn't answer my questions." All of your doubts shall be answered soon enough, chosen one. For now, your utmost presence is required in the real world. Not giving him any room to talk, the ring of light around him shone brighter, and he found his conscious being slowly dragged into the real world. As his consciousness slowly rekindled, Naruto can already tell he was in an entirely different place upon sniffing the familiar scent of disinfectant, instead of the murky smell he smelled the last time he was awake that lingered through the air. Opening his cerulean blue orbs, his suspicion was confirmed when instead of the dark and craggy environment, he was greeted with bright and warm scenery. Cautiously, the blonde stood up from the bed he was laying on and began surveying his surroundings. With the enamel white curtain that ringed around the bed he was on, the rack full of medicines and tomes on the left and the writing desk on his right, not to mention the sanitized air, it didn't take a Nara to tell that he was in an infirmary of some sort. But the main question was, who brought him here and why? He didn't have to ponder long when the door suddenly opened and a pink mare clad in nurse attire stepped into the room. "Oh, good morning, you're finally awake, I see," the mare greeted. Naruto could only give a silent reply at that, too shocked by the sight of the pastel-colored pony to say anything despite being one himself. Unfazed by his lack of response, the mare casually trotted to the side of his bed and spoke, "How are you feeling at the moment? Do you feel any pain of some sort? A headache or a sore muscle perhaps?" Still in a state of utter shock, it took a while before his brain finally registered that she just asked him several questions. No, I'm good I guess." "That's good to hear, but just to be safe, I'll need to do some examinations." There was a momentary pause before she continued on, this time in a surprised manner. "Oh, and where are my manners? I'm Nurse Redeard by the way, but you can call me either by Nurse or Redeard for short. And you are?" "Naruto Uzumaki," he replied back. "Naruto Uzumaki, huh? That's quite a peculiar name you have there," she remarked as she took a pen in her mouth and jotted a few notes down on the clipboard she was carrying the entire time. He didn't have a comment on that. Who names their offspring as Redeard? It almost sounded like a title rather than an actual name, just like how his father was called the Yellow Flasher guy as the Green Beast. Then again, this was an entirely different world than his, so it's probably their standard etiquette of some sort. "You said you'll be doing some examinations, what kind of examinations exactly?" he asked, recalling the previous ones he had with a certain busty blonde and a pink head. None of which were pleasant memories to him. "Nurse Redeard. Don't worry. It's nothing extreme." The whiskered blonde would be lying if he didn't have a hard time believing that. Past experience had led him to believe that physical examinations involved having his joints being bent at angles that weren't possible and his mental capacity tested to the very utmost limit. Yet, Nurse Redeard did none of that. Which makes him wonder, if examinations were meant to be this simply, then what the heck was he doing a long time ago? Eating her words close to her heart, the only things the mare ever done was just pressing her hooves on several parts of his body, as well as rotating his joints, all the while keeping a lookout on his facial expression for any reactions, nothing that required him to tap into Kurama's chakra for any quick recovery, not that he can do so in the first place. In a few minutes' time, she was done and went back to jotting down a few more notes on the clipboard. "Oh, that reminds me, there's someone who would like to talk to you once you're awake," she stated upon remembering. "Can you walk?" I think I can." Removing the blanket off him, Naruto tried to take his first step once more. He stumbled for the first few moments, but aside than that, he was good to go. "I'm good." "Great." Heading to the door she got in from, Nurse Redeard opened it and motioned Naruto to go out first. He obliged and stepped outside, only to freeze at what he saw. The blonde probably would have stayed there gaping like a fish on land had the nurse didn't speak to him. "Come along, we don't want to keep her waiting any longer." Where am I exactly?" he called out. "Why, you're in Canterlot, of course," she replied simply, as if that alone would satisfy him. It didn't. I see. Shaking his head off his stupor, he ran up to catch up with the white mare that was already a few meters ahead of him. "You said we don't have to keep her waiting. Who is this her?" "Why, Princess Celestia, of course. She's the one who brought you here." Naruto nodded in understanding but blinked when he finally processed what she just said. "Wait, did you say princess?" If the white mare heard his last question, she didn't show it. "Here we are," she declared as they arrived at a pair of golden ornamented doors that were as tall as the ceiling above them, decorated with the abstract mural of a white pony, seemingly reaching for the sun above her. The image looked familiar somehow, but he didn't have time to ponder about it when Redeard relentlessly opened it before nudging him in. "Now go on, she's waiting for you inside." Alright, no need to push me," he said. For a mare that was a few inches shorter than him, Redeard was surely strong, and it reminded him of Sakura somehow. As he stepped in, the blonde arrived at a hall that was as grand as any other part of the castle he came across with its well-polished marble-tiled floors, several white spiraling pillars used to support the ceiling, whose surface was decorated with more mural paintings, depicting several ponies doing different actions he wasn't familiar of. The walls weren't excluded from the decoration either, as they were installed with color-tinted glass windows representing even more ponies. As beautiful as the scenery was, his eyes were more focused on the table that lay at the center of the hall. He instantaneously drooled at the sight of the numerous delicacies that was splayed before his cerulean blue eyes. He didn't even realize that he had trotted to the table until it was too late. "Ah, you're finally awake, I see." Looking at his front, his eyes went wide in bewilderment when he found the her that Nurse Retired mentioned about standing on the other side of the table. From her elegant appearance, she was obviously a mare, but with a more adult-like horse appearance unlike the other ones he encountered before this. However, what shocked him the most was her rainbow-like mane that seemed to flow under the slightest flow of air and the wings that were jutting out from her sides. Unaware of his shock, the mare trotted towards him with a grace that reflected her beautiful emergence, all the while giving him a smile that he couldn't help but feel tranquil with. "Good morning, I am Princess Celestia, the current ruler of Equestria," she introduced, revealing her smooth and rich tone of voice. "And you are?" The blonde mentally slapped himself. Naruto Uzumaki." The alicorn smiled gently at that, unperturbed by his strange name. "Well then, it's a pleasure meeting you, Naruto Uzumaki. You must be terribly hungry right now, why don't you help yourself to some of the food here?" Celestia then motioned a hoof to the long dining table. The blonde was practically salivating when the smell of the food finally reached his nostrils, and he wasted no time in flashing to one of the end of the table in the blink of an eye. The alicorn of the sun reflected his action and took a seat on the other side of the table, albeit at a much calmer pace. Just when he was about to dine in, he realized that there was no sign of meat anywhere. Naruto was just about to ask her whether if she had any meat until Kurama spoke within his head. "Kid, horses are herbivore, they don't eat meat. You're just gonna have to make do with what you have at the moment." Looking up front, Naruto flashed Celestia a sheepish grin when he realized that she was still looking at him expectantly, obviously waiting for him to start it off as means of a courtesy, before averting his gaze at all the food on the table. Amongst all the vegetables, he didn't know what to pick first. Literally. Add the fact that he wasn't a vegetable lover to begin with, made it all the more difficult for him to make his decision. His cerulean blue eyes then fell on a nearby platter that was holding several sandwiches. It probably looked normal and safe to eat had it weren't for the white daisy flowers that were protruding out of its edges. Is it even possible to consider those things as a legitimate food? Was it even good for stomach to begin with? And again, it didn't look like he had any other choice, seeing that it was the only thing that he deemed to be at least edible. Following his gaze, Celestia spoke, "Those are daisy sandwiches, one of the castle chef's main specialties. Why don't you give it a try, I'm sure you won't regret it." Unable to turn back, he gingerly took one of the sandwiches with his hooves, briefly glanced at Princess Celestia one more time before inching said food closer to his muzzle, and finally took a nibble. Having experience with eating plenty of vegetables, food and herbal medicines, courtesy of the advice from a certain pinkhead and a busty medic, he had expected the strange meal to have the usual taste of bitterness. Oddly enough, the daisy sandwich has none of that, and surprisingly, it had the juicy taste of sweet honey flavor mixed with flower nectar that set his taste buds ablaze. Before he even realized what was happening, he had gobbled the entire sandwich in the blinking of an eye before proceeding on taking more from the plate. Celestia simply smiled in approval at this, seemingly unfazed by his greedy eating habit. She didn't even mind when he proceeded on other food that was available on the table and casually reached for her teacup. As he continued to clear the meals off the table one by one, the blonde nearly choked and spitted out the cupcake he was currently eating when he saw her casually taking a sip from an ethereally glowing teacup that were levitating midair. "Is something the matter?" she inquired as she lowered said teacup down. It's nothing. Just got something stuck in my throat, that's all." He quickly spoke. She smiled amusingly at that before she spoke, "There's no need to rush. None of the food will be going anywhere. Kurama, did you see that? She just lifted the teacup with chakra." He mentally pointed out. "I see it, but she's not using chakra." "What do you mean it's not chakra?" "I can't say for sure, but whatever form of energy she's using, it's definitely not chakra," he stated. "And if my guess is correct, I'd say it's coming from that horn of hers." The blonde instinctively glanced up at that. Sure enough, the spiraling horn was also engulfed in the same yellowish chakra-like glow, just like the floating teacup. Subconsciously, the blonde brushed a hoof on his own forehead, wondering why he didn't have a horn or a pair of wings just like her. Could it be that they're both of different horse race, perhaps? If that was the case, what was he then and what was her? Sadly, all these questions had to be put to the back of his mind when Celestia struck a conversation once more. "So how do you find the meal, Mr. Uzumaki?" "Great." He replied back without missing a beat before remembering who he was talking to. "I mean, the meals taste great, Your Majesty." Celestia chuckled at that. "There's no need to be too formal with me, Mr. Uzumaki. Just Princess Celestia is fine." Naruto was surprised to hear that. "If that's the case, you can just call me Naruto then. I'm not actually the kind of title person." Now it was the Alicorn's turn to be surprised. Being the ruler of Equestria, most ponies were usually exceptionally honored whenever she addressed them with titles. For some pony to dislike from being referred to with some sort of a title was quite rare. "Very well then, Naruto. If you don't mind, I have one question to ask." Naruto took a second to swallow his food before he talked. "Sure, what is it?" "Yesterday morning, a brief earthquake occurred a distance away from here and near to a town called Ponyville. Further questioning of the citizens there allowed us to pinpoint the origin of the tremor to be somewhere in the Everfree forest." The blonde continued to nonchalantly munch on his meal, all the while keeping a close ear to Princess Celestia as she continued on. "After investigating the crater there, we discovered what seemed to be some sort of a trail that led to a castle deep inside the forest, the very same place where we found your unconscious form." The blonde stiffened at that. "My question to you now is, what were you doing in the Everfree forest and in the castle of the two sisters of all places?" she inquired with a solemn expression. "In case you haven't known, those places aren't exactly safe for any pony to enter." Now that his stomach was filled and his senses came back, it was only by then did he notice something was amiss. Before this, all he saw from her was kindness. Now he can finally notice that this Celestia wasn't some pony you should be messing with. His instincts were internally screaming at him to be wary of her. Not in the hostile way kind of way, but more towards the be careful of what you tell her kind of way. Reaching for the glass of water meant for him, the blonde purposely downed it in one go, as his brain churned for whatever lies he could think of. Yet, despite having a filled stomach, he found it difficult to think of such thing. Somewhere at the back of his mind, something aside than Kurama was strongly advising him to not do so. "Imnit from here." He finally admitted, the word slipped off his lips. Celestia cast at him a puzzled look. "What do you mean?" she inquired. "Are you saying that you're a traveler of some sort?" Parted his muzzle open, he was about to deny such statement when a metaphorical light bulb flickered above his head. Being stuck within the confinements of his mindscape, Kurama raised an eyebrow at what the blonde was currently thinking, but said nothing otherwise. "That's right, I'm actually a traveler, a freelancer to be exact." Whether if Celestia believed him or not, she didn't show it, but Naruto maintained a straight poker face just in case and continued. "You said you saw a crater inside the forest, right? That was actually a residue triggered due to the teleportation technique I used to get here. Not too soon after I landed, I was attacked by a group of wolves." "Timberwolves?" Celestia corrected. "What? Timberwolves? It's the name of the wolves you mentioned," Celestia elaborated with a smile. "Oh. Anyway, I tried to fight them back, but eventually had to run away to the castle when they keep on coming back alive over and over again." "Were you the one who broke the bridge indoors then?" Surprised, Naruto put a sheepish smile when he realized he was caught red-handed. "Yeah, those were me, I had to make sure those timberwolves don't chase after me," he defended. "Once I was safe, I sort of fainted from all the fatigue I've gained." "Well, that's quite a story you have there," Celestia concluded. "Yeah, sorry if I caused any unwanted trouble or anything." He apologized as he scratched the back of his head. "It's alright. I'm just glad that you're safe," she reassured. "Though I must say, it's not every day some pony decided to fight the Timberwolves, even if you don't know what they're capable of. You must be quite skilled combat." Naruto let out an awkward laugh. "Well, I sort of learned a few moves throughout my travel." He waved it off, hoping that doing so would make her drop the subject. While Celestia's lips curved into a smile, her eyes continued to have that suspicious look. The blonde was glad that he was layered in orange fur, otherwise, she would have seen him sweating bullets. "How interesting," she praised. "And I believe there's some pony who would like to hear your story as well. Follow me." Taking one last sip of her tea, Celestia left her side of the table and exited the dining hall with Naruto in tow. As they trotted through the castle, the blonde couldn't help but be amazed by practically every unfamiliar thing they came across. The unique architecture, the numerous pony troops that were marching about the place, even the flower garden seemed fascinating to him. "This is a beautiful place you got here," he commented, effectively breaking the silence. "Why thank you, but I'm sure you've seen other places that are far much better. You are a traveler, after all." "I doubt that," he muttered so that only he could hear it. Unlike Konoha or any other villages within the Fire Country, the Canterlot castle was clean, colorful and fancy. Mostly due to the fact the shinobis were too occupied with war, hostile threats and whatnot to care about such minute details. Sure, they have the occasional cleaning chores aka the Equestria ranked missions, but as for decorating, nope, not so much. As they conversed with one another, the two arrived at what seemed to be a garden area flourished with a spacious neatly trimmed grass field and a few colorful flowers patches here and there. Naruto's sight then fell on two more pastel-colored ponies who at the moment were currently sitting on one of the marble benches erected around the garden. They were casually laughing and chatting with one another until the armored one saw them approaching. Princess Celestia. I hope I'm not disturbing anything important. Celestia inquired with a mirth smile. Shining Armor fumbled over his words. Rolling her eyes at his clumsiness, the pink falsitor took over, of course not, Princess Celestia. Me and Shining were just chatting to pass the time, that's all. She then averted her gaze to the blonde. She smiled. He's finally awake, I see. He took that as a cue to introduce himself. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, I'm a freelancer traveler. Hello Naruto, my name is Princess Cadence, but you can call me Cadence for short. I'm Shining Armor, Lieutenant of the Royal Canterlot Guards. He introduced, having regained his composure once more. Lieutenant. It's probably a military ranking of some sort. His Biju assumed. Just play along for now. Nodding, the blonde averted his attention back to the three ponies. I have a favor to ask to the both of you. Sure, what is it? Seeing that you both are free, I was wondering if you can bring our newly profound guest here on a tour around the castle. Celestia requested, surprising Naruto at the background. I would have done so myself, but I need to attend a meeting with merchants in a few minutes' time. Of course we'd love to. She cheered. It's not every day we get to have guests. Right Shining? Ooh sure. He said in partial disappointment, something that didn't go unnoticed by Naruto. Celestia smiled at that. Wonderful, I'll leave him in your capable hooves then. She responded before facing the blonde. I look forward to seeing you again later during lunchtime. Sure thing, he replied back, unaware of the bewildered expressions on Shining and Cadence's faces as he said so. Still smiling, the alicorn of the sun trotted away from the garden, leaving the blonde under the two's care. So where do you want to go first, Naruto? The pink alicorn inquired once she was out of sight. Are you sure it's okay? Naruto inquired. I don't want to be a drag or anything. Understanding what he was hinting at, she quickly interjected, it's fine really. Shining is just sad that our dates kept on being interrupted, that's all. I'm still here, you know. The lieutenant grumbled. And you make it sound like it's a good thing. Shining, Princess Celestia asked the two of us to do a favor for her. How can we refuse to that? Decided that. I know but still. Feeling a little sympathetic for her lover, the alicorn of love approached him and used a hoof to lift his head up. Tell you what, if you help me bring Naruto on a tour around the place, I'll make sure our next date to be the pink alicorn paused to put in a dramatic effect. Extra special. Said lieutenant perked up at that, albeit slightly. You promise? I promise. Alright, he said with a soft smile. I'll trust you. As they stared into each other's captivating eyes, the two ponies found themselves slowly inching their muzzles towards one another. And it probably would have escalated further had Naruto didn't clear his throat, a silent reminder to the two Leveponies that he was there as well. Blushing, the two took a step back all the while sheepishly laughing to one another. So, where should we start? This here is the kitchen area, the place where our meals are cooked and prepared. Naruto could only gape at that. This was a kitchen area. Kami, it was so huge. Then again, the blonde suppose he was partially at fault for this, seeing that the only kitchen he ever saw was the pathetic one in his worn-out apartment, Tucci's glorious raiment stand, and the occasional BBQ stand. On the left side of the kitchen, the blonde saw a total of 5 stoves, 4 being gas-operated, while the last one was traditional coal-orientated next to several oak shelves and cabinets that probably hold the small ingredients such as spices and dried food. While on the right there were the typical sinks and a dishwasher used for cutleries and other wetness. A huge stainless steel refrigerator stood at the end of the kitchen, which obviously was used to hold more food ingredients, and Naruto assumed most of them being vegetables. The long and narrow tabletop was the key area though, as it occupied practically majority of the kitchen space. Adding to the prosperous atmosphere was the numerous cooking staffs that were roaming about the place, each dressed in the standard chef uniform, consisting of a white puffy hat and a white buttoned-up top that seemingly unable to remain rooted at one spot for too long. A few passing by ponies bowed in respect upon noticing their presences, but immediately went back to work soon after. Quite a busy place you have here. Cadence nodded at that. The chefs here in the castle take their job very seriously. I can tell. Speaking of seriously, Shining remarked, earning the other two's attention. There's Gustav over there. Hey Gustav. Having seen so many ponies in the area, the shinobi had expected this Gustav character to be a pony as well. Wrong. Naruto involuntarily took a step back when a figure emerged out of the crowd. Instead of a pony like he expected to be, Gustav was didn't know what he was actually. First sightings indicates him to be a lion of some sort, but with the minor difference of an eagle's head instead of a lion's, a set of 4 talon-tipped legs instead of a cat's paws, and a body covered in feathers instead of fur. If the sight of such an unidentified mythical being wasn't strange enough, he had a black curly mustache on his yellow beak. "Well, if it isn't Princess Cadence and Monsieur Shining Armor," he exclaimed in a deep French accent. "Bonjour. What brings you two here in my beloved kitchen? Another round of my wonderful breakfast perhaps?" "Good morning to you too, Gustav. And no, we're not here for second rounds," she politely replied back. "We're just here to show our guest around the castle, that's all." Moving aside, she then proceeded on introducing the newcomer. "Gustav, this is Naruto, he's our new guest for today. Naruto, this is Gustav, he's the head chef here in this castle." "Bonjour. Gustav Legrand, at your service," he proudly greeted, his left foot poised for a hoof shake. The orange stallion was skeptical at first, but shook his claw nonetheless. "Naruto Uzumaki. As much as I wish to entertain you, I'm afraid I can't. My presence is needed for the preparations of lunch," he stated with an apologetic smile. "Very sorry for this inconvenience, Monsieur Naruto." Naruto inwardly groaned. First, it was Mr. Uzumaki, now it's Monsieur Naruto. Why can't they refer to him normally? Cadence shook her head. "It's fine, Gustav, we're not planning on staying here for too long." Cadence spoke. "Come along, Naruto, we still have plenty more places to explore. This is the main archive." Cadence introduced again. "It's pretty self-explanatory, but this is where ponies do their studies." Standing at one of the many balconies available, Naruto got a perfect overview of the maze of bookshelves below him. Contrast to the bustling kitchen a while ago, he only saw a few ponies trotting about the place, either dressed in scholar robes and hats or librarian suit uniforms. "This place is huge," he commented. "It should be. Considering how that all of this belongs to Princess Celestia." Naruto couldn't help but whistle at that. "This is Princess Celestia's collection, huh? Did she mention how many years it took to gather this much?" Hearing no answer, the blonde looked back only to see the two trotted down the stairs that was positioned at the side of the very balcony he was on. "Hey, wait up." Catching up with the couple, the blonde finally asked the question that bugged him. "So why are we going inside the library again?" "There's some pony we like you to meet." They both answered in unison. "Boo. You'll see." As they turned around a particular corner, Naruto caught the side of a filly that was as tall as his legs. She had flat-rimmed mane and tail that were a mix of sapphire blue and violet, with a few strands being brilliant rose, and was covered in a well-matched pale, mulberry-colored fur. As of the moment, it didn't appear like she noticed there as she was too engrossed in reading the book. "There she is," the lieutenant said when he saw who it was. "Hey Twily," said Little Mare glanced at their direction upon hearing her name. She smiled brightly. "Oh hey Shiny, hey Cadence. What are you reading?" Cadence said, tilting her head to get a better view of the book's content. "Calculus," she simply replied. "Aren't you a little too young for that?" Cadence asked with a raised brow, but a knowing smile. "Since when I'm not," she answered cheekily before tilting her head to the side and look at the orange stallion. "Who's that?" "Twily, meet Naruto Uzumaki, he's our guest here in the castle for today," Shining introduced. "Naruto, this is my little foal sister, Twilight Sparkle. Do these ponies have a thing for weird names or something? I'm sure they'll say the same thing if they go to our world." "Hello, Twilight," he greeted with his signature foxy grin. If he knew any better, she was scrutinizing him with those calculative eyes of her, not in the kind of a curious child seeing something new, but more towards how a professor would examine an interesting specimen. "Hello," she finally said, though in a much more monotone voice compared to when she greeted Shining and Cadence. "Say, we're bringing him on a tour around the castle. You want to join, Twilight?" Cadence asked. "No thanks, I need to go back to studying." "Alright then. Don't forget to join us later during lunchtime. We don't want you to study yourself to death again." "Okay." With that said, she resumed back to reading. "Well, that was short and sweet," he pointed out once they trotted out of earshot. Not that he need to do so seeing that she was too engrossed in reading to begin with. Kami, he can probably do a dynamic entry behind her and she won't even bat a single eyelash. "Sorry about that, she can be a bit shy to strangers sometimes." Naruto instinctively looked back at the filly upon hearing the statement. "I'm not sure shy is the right word. This here is the training grounds. The place where the Royal Canterlot guards practice and hone their skills," Shining declared proudly. Dramatic declarations aside, the castle training grounds was almost the same like any training fields back at his home village, except for a few details. While Konoha's training fields came in small but large quantities, the castles had theirs in the complete opposite and was divided into several sections that focused on different things. Some had straw dummies installed, while others have obstacle courses and odd contraptions whose functions he had no clue of. Unfortunately, as spacious as it was, there wasn't any pony training practicing in the area at that moment. Naruto was disappointed by this. With the numerous guards he saw throughout the castle wielding different sorts of weapons, he wanted to see the ponies in combat action. If he's lucky, he might learn a few things from them which he can use as his own. When I said we have plenty of places to explore, I don't actually mean the training grounds, you know. Hey, the training ground is fun to look around too. Not for me, it's not. As the two engaged in another round of bickering once more, the orange stallion took the opportunity to survey the several weapons stacked at the corner, consisting of mostly swords, a few spears and the occasional shield and armors. While he applauded the ponies for their means of defense, he couldn't help but wonder just how they would wield such things. His pondering was put on hold when he sensed a looming presence behind him. And who in the Tartarus are you? Turning around, Naruto was met face to face with a stallion. A stallion he would have said hello to if it weren't for the scowl on his face. Contrary to all the pastel-colored ponies he saw, the pony standing before him had a pair of sharp golden eyes and was layered in a set of heavy armor consisting of a black Trojan helmet with red plume on top. An equally black chest plate that had the golden Canterlot guard crest emblazoned in the center, as well as 4 leg armors that was layered over one another to increase protection efficiency over his obsidian black fur. General Iron Hoof. In a blur of purple, Shining appeared beside him in a firm stance with his head raised high, a standard military posture that signified a soldier's discipline and firm resolution. Lieutenant Shining, the black pony began in a deep rough voice, his piercing glare never straying away from the blonde. I've received reports of a civilian pony roaming about the castle grounds. Care to explain what's all that about? This is Naruto Uzumaki. He's a guest of Princess Celestia. The guest? We found him unconscious in the Everfree forest yesterday, and it was Princess Celestia who ordered him to be brought here for medical treatment. I see. He said after a long silence, his sharp gaze unraveled as he stared at the blonde. Naruto wasn't far off either and returned his gaze with his own. Naruto Uzumaki, huh? He spoke out slowly, almost as if he was testing out how it will sound like when pronounced. I'm keeping an eye on you, Uzumaki. But the final word said, General Iron Hoof turned around and left. Once he was out of sight, Shining let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, while Naruto maintained his composure. Who's that? That's General Iron Hoof. He's the leader of the Canterlot Royal Guards. He's a genuine prick. I can say that much. Shining cracked a smile at that. He's always like that. He agreed. But I'm more surprised that you managed to maintain your composure in front of him. Most ponies won't even bother making eye contact the first time they saw him. The blonde shrugged at that. Let's just say I've dealt with ponies that were much worse than him. The statement alone piqued Shining and Cadence's curiosity, but they didn't delve on it further when he showed no sign of telling. Speaking of which, it's nearly time for lunch. Let's head to the dining hall where Princess Celestia is waiting. Almost instantaneously, Naruto's stomach groaned and he found himself unconsciously licking his lips at the prospect of eating another batch of daisy sandwiches. Even though he already had quite a few not too long ago. Sure thing, lead the way. He quickly agreed, not bothering to hide his excitement. With Cadence and Shining up front leading the way, he was just about to follow them when he suddenly felt something. What was that? He questioned to himself as he looked around in pure confusion. I could have sworn I felt something just now. Whereas his battle instincts weren't tingling, something was tugging him at back of his mind, something bad. And it was never wrong before this. Finally making up his mind, the orange stallion casted the couple one last glances before silently trotting to the opposite direction. Relying on his instincts alone, the blonde found himself wandering into a part of the Canterlot castle he haven't went through. He was in uncharted territory. As indicated by the General Iron Hoof's reaction upon seeing him, he's going to assume that his presence in the castle wasn't notified to all the staffs. As such, he needed to keep a lookout on all the guards that were patrolling by. Simple as that. At least, it would have been simple had it weren't for the fact he now had hooves that does not go well with the marble floor. Eventually, Naruto found himself on another grass patch field located on the other side of the castle with nopony in sight, something that greatly puzzled the blonde. If there wasn't anyone in the area then why were his senses telling him to get here then? Could it be that he was just imagining things? He shook his head at such thing. No, something was definitely going to happen here. He can feel it, his instincts never failed him before and it never will now, but what? The blonde broke out of his stupor when a piece of papyrus paper flew across his line of sight and landed near his feet. Curiosity got the better of him, he picked it up and gave it a quick read. As expected, he couldn't understand a single since it was written in this world's language. But why was it here? Help. Glancing up, his eyes went wide in absolute bewilderment when he saw a certain purple dangling helplessly on one of the crenellation gaps, several meters above his very spot. Even though he was living in a world full of pastel-colored ponies, the blonde can easily recognize the filly from a mile away. Twilight. Naruto. She said as she looked down at him, tears swelling under her eyes. I can't hold on much longer. Hang on. Easier said than done. Without chakra in his disposal, there was no way for him to get up there in time. Going around it was definitely out of the question either, since that would take a much longer time. So what should he do? More importantly, what can he do? His heart took a double take when the inevitable happened and Twilight's hoof grip on the edge finally gave up and she plummeted down with an echoing scream. His mind gone blank, Naruto dropped the paper and galloped straight for her falling figure with all the agility his chakra-less body can muster. Are you sure he was with you the entire time? Celestia inquired. She had been in the dining hall, simply waiting for lunch to be served as well as the three to arrive when Shining and Cadence busted into the place with distressed looks. Needless to say, it can't be anything good. Her suspicion was confirmed when she heard their story of how the blonde suddenly disappeared just when they were about to head for dining hall, almost without a single trace of sound. Yes, he was with us throughout the whole time, but then he suddenly disappeared just when we were heading to the dining hall. Cadence spoke, concern evident in her tone of voice as she paced back and forth. I'm sure he's fine. He probably went to the toilet or something. Shining tried to calm her down. But we haven't showed him where the bathroom is. Alright, that's enough you two. She firmly declared, earning their attention at once. It was just 2 words yet it was enough to keep them both quiet. There's no need to fight here. We'll call in the guards here and conduct an extensive search for him around the area. Extensive search for who? Blonde inquired as he sneaked his head between the gaps of the door. Naruto. The three exclaimed in unison. Where on Equestria have you been? We've been looking all over for you. The blonde sheepishly rubbed the back of his head at that. Yeah, sorry about that. Got something to do for a bit. Do what exactly? Celestia questioned. Yeah, about that. Rather than answering her directly, Naruto stepped into the dining hall, revealing some pony that they didn't expect to be there at all on his backside. Hey Shiny, hey Cadence, hey Princess Celestia. The purple cheerfully greeted as she stood on Naruto's backside, as if they were old buddies. Said 3 ponies could only stare at the two with bewilderment at that. Then, in unison, they spoke, Twilight. It's kind of a long story. Time seemed to go in slow motion as he watched Twilight plummeted down. Under the current speed he was in and at the rate she was falling, he didn't think he'd make it in time to rescue her. The negative thought alone made his heart quenched. However, just when he thought he wouldn't make it, a surge of energy suddenly coursed through his veins, and the blonde soon found himself galloping horizontally along the castle walls in a speed that would put the Wanderbolts to utter shame. As shocked as he was, he didn't have time to question what just happened and immediately jumped off and caught the little filly midair. Once he was secured under his embrace, he prepared himself for impact, all the while making sure that she won't be affected by the wall. It wasn't going to go well for his side, but he couldn't care less so as long as she's safe. Thud. Yup, definitely won't go well for him. He probably broke a few horse bones now that he thought about. Craning his head forward, the blonde couldn't help but crack a smile when he saw the purple filly still had her eyes closed shut and was shaking fervently, still unaware of her safety. He gave her a quick nudge. Twilight. The filly opened her eyes slowly at that. What happened? How did I? She stammered, confusion etched as she looked at her surroundings. Did you save me? Naruto nodded in confirmation at that before sporting a concerned look. Are you alright? You're not hurt anywhere now, are you? No, I'm fine, I think. Naruto sighed in relief before flashing him a foxy grin, all the while ignoring the pain that was coursing through his body. That's good to know. He said. In any case, did anyone ever mention how heavy you are? Naruto wasn't kidding when he said it was a long story. He himself didn't know how to explain the situation, seeing that it happened due to his own pure instincts. Fortunately, the three weren't too keen on hearing the details, mostly because they were also occupied with eating lunch as well. By the time he was done, the table was already cleared off any more food mostly by him. This is the second time you've surprised me. He was so fast. I really thought I was goner. Twilight added her 2 cents excitedly, still caught up by the incident. An act that was obviously out of her character if the three's perplexed looks was of any indication. While I applaud your desire to study more, Twilight, you should always be careful with yourself. Celestia spoke. It was a good thing Mr. Naruto. Naruto. The shinobi interjected. Naruto was nearby and rescued you. Otherwise, things would have turned out for the worse. The princess is right, Twily. Shining scolded sternly, his older brother instincts kicked in. You really need to be careful next time you're on the move. The purple filly slumped at that. I know, I'm sorry for that you guys. I really am. I'll promise to be very careful. Let's just be glad that she's fine. Naruto defended. What matters the most now is that Twilight is alright. He's right. Cadence agreed upon seeing her lovable Foal's downcast expression. Let's just forget that this ever happened. No point crying over spilt milk, right? The ponies present silently agreed at that. There was no point in dwelling over something that has happened in the past. Unwanted incidents aside, how have you found the tour around Canterlot Castle so far, Naruto? It was amazing. I honestly didn't expect this place to be so beautiful. Was his honest feedback, munching on one last daisy sandwich. He wasn't joking about that. This place certainly was beautiful, way beautiful than Konoha or any other villages within the Fire Country, if he must say so himself. Celestia smiled at that. I'm glad you hear that. The White Alicorn said. Because this will be your home for now. The orange stallion nearly spitted out his daisy sandwich upon hearing that. Wait, what? Seeing that this is your first time here in Canterlot, I figured I'd let you stay here in the castle to save you the effort from having to spend additional effort and money to find a place to stay. She elaborated. In fact, I've even requested my servants to prepare a room just for you while you went on your tour. Twilight evidently perked up at that. The same goes for Cadence and Shining, though the latter two were more toward surprise. Are you sure about this? I don't want to be a drag or anything. He asked for the second time of that day. But of course. After everything you've done, it would only plausible for us to return the gesture by doing so. Naruto pondered hard on this. As a shinobi, staying in one place for too long was never a good idea. But at the same time, he couldn't just refuse the offer, especially if said offer came from a princess of all ponies. He sighed. Then grinned afterwards. So where do I hit the sack then? The end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Bye bye.